Welcome to the show. Hope you had a great weekend. IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling on a Tuesday. I've got two people with me today. One of them will actually understand when I say 5150. The other one's Vince DeDario.
There you go.
It's a basketball score. That's the last time I checked.
That's what he thought. Yeah.
And I believe, Chuck, you were actually listening when that happened. I think I might have got a text from you when that happened.
Just about drove off the road.
Well, Chuck Freeby is with us. He is a long time, of course. It's the best of both worlds, I guess is what it is. We've got Chuck Freeby from Sports Michiana. How long have you worked in the market now, Chuck?
Well, if you want to go back to my radio days with Vince Turner, that would be 1985, so 40 years.
40 years.
Nice round number.
But I started when I was 5.
Right. And I mean, you can tell.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, this used to be actually blonde. And there used to be a lot more of it. You know the feeling, Sean.
Oh, I mean, it's funny because this fall, this middle of October, will be my 25th year here, and I found a picture. I might even have it. Right here.
Oh, he's digging.
Found a picture of you.
If it's on top.
That's another song, Vince, by the way.
I was enjoying you singing it, so I'm good.
Wouldn't.
There's a picture anyway. Got a picture of myself at Notre Dame Stadium, first ever game, and there's actually a pretty decent amount of dark hair on top of my head. Unlike right now. So
not all of us can afford the toupee like DeDario.
That's right.
It's money well spent. All right.
It's those Italian roots, I think, is where he gets it. Well, Chuck is working with Sports Michiana right now. Just finishing your first year, getting close to your first year?
Yeah, coming up on the 1-year anniversary in July. And we're finishing our first season with a high school track meet on Thursday as we do the regional over at Goshen. Vince has a vested interest in that one with a 400-meter relay runner. So we're looking forward to that. But, yeah, heck of a first year and still doing a lot of Notre Dame stuff, of course, with our podcast that we do. And so,
Absolutely. You and Angelo DeDario. Speaking of dead weight. Angelo DeDario.
Wow.
Angelo DeCarlo, sorry.
I didn't realize that Vince had held the adoption, but that's great. Congrats.
I think my brain went with my dark hair is what happened.
I mean, I feel like we're brothers at times, but, it's all good. It's all part of the family. We're all one big.
Shout at one another quite a bit. So,
right.
100%. 100%.
Right. Well, we invited Chuck on today because I thought it would be interesting. We've talked obviously a lot about this Notre Dame-USC stuff over the past couple of weeks, but Chuck, in addition to you guys both grew up here, for one. So and Chuck is a Notre Dame alum, so I feel like there's an even deeper sort of perspective to what this rivalry means. One from two guys like you who both grew up around the rivalry, Notre Dame in general, but the rivalry specifically, and Chuck, who graduated from Notre Dame. What year did you graduate from Notre Dame?
86, the last year of the Faust regime.
Okay. So you obviously just missed the Dan Devine regime in terms of when you were at school.
So I watched the green jersey game from home, and I think I was 11 then, and what a memorable game when they bring that horse out of the tunnel and they spill out in the green jerseys and absolutely lay the lumber to USC on that Saturday afternoon. And even Jerry Faust had success against USC. As a matter of fact, 1 year he changed into green jerseys at halftime. The problem was the Irish were already up 31-0 at the time, and it was kind of a Bush League maneuver at that point, to do it. But he had success. Lou Holtz had terrific success against USC. It became a great cause celeb for Lou. And then obviously the pendulum changed a little bit during the Davey, Willingham, and Weisier.
Yes,
Absolutely. And even Bob Davey had decent success
Yeah.
against USC, but that was obviously still like the Paul Hackett years and
Right.
Pete Carroll, so
Yeah, once Pete got there and changed the culture a little bit and got some financing, things went pretty well for them.
Do you remember the first Notre Dame-USC game you attended in person?
That I attended in person would be it would be when I was a student there, and that would have been the '83 game, and that was the one where Jerry changed uniforms at halftime.
At halftime.
Yeah.
Did the students change at halftime too?
They did not. They did not.
How about you, Vince? What was your first Notre Dame-USC game?
I think my first Notre Dame-USC game would have been when I was a student at Holy Cross. That was really because I started going to games when I was in high school. If a random friend had an extra ticket, that kind of thing, and back then we would just go and hang out. And I remember very, very vividly somebody reaching over the top of the stadium and dropping a ticket to us. Like back in the day,
Right.
before the expansion and all that. I mean, you can
Right.
see the top row. Hey, you want a ticket? Here you go, and
Sure.
ticket and go in. But I think my first because those people aren't dropping tickets to USC games. You know what I
No.
mean? So
Not today.
It was definitely when I was a student and I was able to sit in the student section. Had the old card of tickets and things like that. So that would have been my first in-person situation because I had a cousin who went to USC, so we would battle all the time. But yeah, actually attending in person was more when I became a student.
It's funny, like you talk about how different the stadium is, and that in that picture that I've got down on the field, like you can see the top of the stadium in like what's behind me is what's now the press box that we all sit in on the east side of the stadium.
other side.
The stadium looks so tiny in those photos compared to now. But
Well, this is the same stadium that Lambeau Field was based
Right.
on, basically. So
That's a good point.
that kind of intimate atmosphere that was created back then.
Chuck, let me ask you this, and
Uh-oh.
we were talking just before we started the show. You've got an interesting household because your wife, her father is a USC alum.
Her father went to USC
Okay.
and grew up back in the '60s when Mike Garrett was running the football and John McKay was coaching them. And so she was raised in a household where, I mean, the USC Notre Dame game was everything, along with USC UCLA. Those were the two big games of the year. And so she wound up going to St. Mary's, and she worked at WNDU when I worked at WNDU. And that's where we met. And the rivalry over the years has had some ebb and flow in the household, just as it's had it, on the scoreboard. But it's been great. We try to support each other as best we can through the other games of the year. And she's met Marcus Freeman in person. She's a big Marcus Freeman fan. She really likes the way he carries himself, the way he represents himself. And she, like many other USC faithful that I've heard from, not too happy about the fact that this could be the last game of the series. Now, we shall see if that actually happens or not. But the talk around USC being, well, we make so many trips out to the Midwest and the East now that we're in the Big Ten, why should we make another one every 2 years? I don't think that's sitting too well with most of the Trojan faithful.
How's it sitting with you as a Notre Dame alum? Because again, like you grew up around this Notre Dame football. You went to Notre Dame, graduated from Notre Dame. Like, what do you think of the fact that what's literally the longest running intersectional rivalry? I mean, the only thing that has stopped this series is World War II and a global pandemic.
Right.
So it's so what do you think about all this?
No, it's ridiculous that they would want to end it. There's got to be ways that they can keep this going. And whether it requires USC and Notre Dame to move this game earlier in the season, okay, don't play it at a neutral field, though.
So you're anti-neutral field.
I'm anti-neutral field. But part of what makes the majesty of this series are the two venues, two of the most storied venues in sports. Not only Notre Dame Stadium, which has been around since 1930, but the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum is one of the great American sports venues. You think of not only USC football, but the Rams, the Dodgers, so many Olympic games, including the one coming up in 2028.
Yeah.
Yes, the Raiders too, for what they were worth. But they did play in the
They were
Coliseum.
there for a while.
They did play in the Coliseum. So many great athletes have paraded through there. Why would you want to play this at like Jerry World in Dallas? Or
It's very specific, Sean.
or
that is
that just doesn't make any sense. You're still traveling then if you're USC. You might as well just every other year suck it up and come to South Bend in October.
No, I mean that's a good point, because unless you're going to play it in Las Vegas or Phoenix, even, or wherever, someplace relatively close to the West Coast, it's a very good point. Like you are still traveling for that game if you're USC.
And the obvious benefit for Notre Dame is they get a location out on the West Coast to go reach, because they want to see themselves as this national program, which they are. And so to be able to go out there, and especially at the end of the year, Thanksgiving weekend, when it's cold here, you go someplace decently temperature and play football. I mean, that's the idea of why that game, part of the reason why that game was created.
One of the things, and Vince, you can jump in after Chuck here too if you want, but one of the things that's kind of been floated by USC, I mean, there have been some different things in addition to playing, at the beginning of the season that you just talked about there, Chuck. Well, let's just go to that, I guess. Do you we played some comments from Brady Quinn last week. Brady not so hot on moving the game Notre Dame USC to the start of the season. He talked about the fact that you play it in October, you play it in November. There's obviously more ramifications on the line, especially if you play it Thanksgiving weekend at the end of the season like last year. But would you be opposed to seeing it moved to the front of the season, essentially like the Notre Dame Michigan series used to be?
You're going to have to look at how schedules are going to be put together. I think it's going to be tough for USC to get the gap in the Big Ten schedule every year to come here and play in October. The game used to be, way back when, played in November, and no matter where.
Right.
And
I think you have to go back to the 50s, maybe early 60s since that happened.
USC wanted no part of that.
Exactly.
I bet.
So thanks, Vince. Take that. And so Notre Dame agreed to have it moved to October. If you're going to move it up to the beginning of the year, then you're going to lose the ability Notre Dame has had to move around to different places, such as going to Miami this year, going to Texas A&M last year. They have been able to use that first game as a marquee matchup, but in different segments of the country. You move it up to the beginning of the year, yes, it's still Notre Dame USC, but it loses a little bit of the luster, in my opinion, because yes, it kicks off the season, but so many times by the time you get to October or November, there's something riding on that game. Remember, even the last time that USC came here with Caleb Williams, they were a one-loss team coming into Notre Dame Stadium that night. And nobody expected Notre Dame to lay the smackdown on them that they did in that game. That was a hyped up football game. You get those in October or November. The only hype around games in September is the fact that they're finally playing them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say I would much rather, like, if you're giving me the option, I want to play it at the end of the year. Like that would be the ideal situation, whether it's home, whether it's away. Playing at the end of the year is the way to go. And, you can you can say, obviously, USC, UCLA. I'm not a part of that rivalry. So, I mean, even you could speak to that a little bit more than I could because you have in your house a USC person. There's a lot of people that say, USC people that I've heard in the last week or two say the Notre Dame game is more of a rivalry than the US or the UCLA game. I don't know the answer to that. But if you're going to put Notre Dame and USC in the same weekend as rivalry weekend, quote unquote, I don't think there's a better spot for it. But if you're telling me that I'm going to lose the series completely unless you play it someplace else in the schedule, I guess I'm willing to bend on when they play it. Does that make sense? Like, I don't want to. I don't want to lose it.
No question. If you have to make the concession that you move it into September, or you lose it altogether,
right?
Of course, you take. Well, then we'll play it in September.
Right.
Now, I don't know if it's truly there or not. I don't know how much Pete Bavankwa and Jennifer Cohen have really taught. Lincoln Riley has flapped his gums for what it's worth.
Exactly.
But I haven't heard a whole lot from the USC athletic department, which isn't surprising because, quite frankly, the leadership there has had such a turnstile. It's kind of tough to keep track of who the athletic director is this week.
See, and that's another reason why this whole thing is so baffling from the USC perspective, because again, you can talk about the travel in the Big Ten, and you can talk about, well, your strength of schedule is a little bit tougher now that you're in the Big Ten instead of playing in the Pac-12. But at the end of the day, the reason you're in the Big Ten is because of the big paycheck that came with it. And the Notre Dame-USC game in the Coliseum is the biggest ticket.
It's the biggest draw
USC
of the year.
has.
Biggest draw of the year. Not close.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why I don't understand why you would want to walk away from all of that. Because you've got one extra tough game now, right now.
It shows you, though, how little ticket revenue really means to a college football budget these days compared to the TV money.
Good point.
It's probably true. But, on the other side of that also, not just ticket revenue, but, we started to hear some boosters are mad, which means, money, coming in the coffers as well.
That will get their attention because that's more money. That is probably more money than the ticket revenue.
Right.
Let's face it.
Right. Exactly. And I kind of think that, again, kind of going to what you guys were saying, if you gave me the choice, I would definitely want Notre Dame-USC to be played in November. And the current setup that they have is just fine. But given the alternative of losing the series and playing it at the start of the year, I would definitely take the start of the year. And we're not used to it yet because we've gotten so used to this, October, November, where they have traditionally played it. But it reminds me of when Notre Dame and Michigan used to play at the start of the season, two huge rivals right out of the chute. You knew it was going to be a big game, right out of the chute every year. And I think that there's maybe some new excitement you can kind of generate from that if it comes to that.
And let's face it, the reason Notre Dame played Michigan at the start of the year is Michigan wanted to have that game before they got into the Big Ten schedule.
Right.
So you can understand if USC approached it the same way and said,
sure,
we want to have this game. This is our marquee non-conference game before we get into the Big Ten schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah. I honestly don't have a huge problem with it. I would be personally devastated if the series went away. I mean, this is the game I look forward to the most all season long, every single year. My favorite t-shirt as a kid I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and it had a decade of dominance, and it had all the games from like the 80s on the back of it. And I used to wear that around my cousin all the time, but it's my favorite t-shirt as a kid. Like the USC rivalry with Notre Dame, it just runs deep. Like that's, again, my most favorite game of the year, every single year.
Chuck, you were here for the peak of probably, I would think it was the peak of the Michigan rivalry, the USC rivalry, and the Miami rivalry, all three of those. Yeah. Like at their peak, how would you kind of rank what those meant? And again, I'm talking to a Notre Dame alum, so I think it's I think it's interesting to hear your perspective because, like, when I moved here, okay, Notre Dame, Bob Davie beat Pete Carroll in his first season in 2001. That was my first Notre Dame USC game. But then starting the next year, it was Pete Carroll running roughshod there for a while. So it felt like, and the Michigan series in the meantime was still going on at that point. So it definitely felt like that was a little bit more of an intense rivalry than Notre Dame USC at that point.
Miami is basically a 3-year rivalry. It's 88 to 90. The schools have played before then. The schools have played after that. But really, the crux of that rivalry happened, well, let's say 87 to 90. The butt whooping that Notre Dame took down in Miami in Jerry Faust's last game, 1985. Lou Holtz goes down there again, 87. It's closer, but it's still a butt whooping. 88, they come here, the famous Catholics versus convicts game. 89, the unforgettable and perhaps unforgivable 3rd and 41 that Miami is able to convert with Michael Irvin, and they go on to beat the Irish in as hostile a road game, I think, as Notre Dame has ever played in. And then 90, coming back here, and Rick Meyer leading the Irish to a victory over the Canes, and then the rivalry stopping because it had to cool off. There was no question about that. Mm-hmm. But that's such a condensed period of time. Michigan and Notre Dame spans a little wider period of time, but really not that much. Mm-hmm. It didn't resume again until the late 70s. And it went basically until, let's say, the early 2000s. I mean, it was kind of on again, off again a little bit during the Weiss era. But that's a period of time. Then you're talking Notre Dame and USC. Notre Dame and USC goes from the 1920s to now.
Right.
So if you're going to compare those three rivalries, it's easy to say which one is the most important in the history of Notre Dame football.
Exactly.
It may not be the one that fired. If you're a Notre Dame fan and you're living close to Michigan people, obviously that game carries a little more importance because of proximity. But from a historic standpoint, and from the fact that so many national championships were decided between the two schools over the years in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there's no question that Notre Dame USC is the most important of those rivalries, which is why the great John Facenda intones in Wake Up the Echoes, the greatest of all football rivalries is Notre Dame and USC.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you mentioned, the proximity with Michigan, is part of why, like the perception around here when they were still playing, in that, because we're talking about early 2000s, through what, mid, over 2010.
I mean,
whatever it was.
How many times have they played in the last 15 years?
Yeah, and I mean, now it's all but forgotten, unfortunately. Same with Miami, and that's I think that's what they have to remember. I think that Jen Cohen or whoever at USC needs to kind of take a step back and realize that you let this go away and
it may not come back.
That's right. In a few years, it's long forgotten. And it's literally at this point, especially where we are now with everything else going on in college football, it's one of the greatest traditions that we have left, I think, in college.
Now, if you're looking at it from a cold calculating standpoint, and you're USC and you're in the Big Ten, why in the world would you want to play one more competitive game in your non-conference schedule when the idea is to get into the college football playoff? And if you're Lincoln Riley, I can certainly understand. And if you want to call it cowardice or chicken or whatever, you can do that. But Lincoln Riley is paid to get a team into the college football playoff. Most people would rather take the path of least resistance to make that happen if their job depends on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with all the automatic bids that the Big Ten and the SEC are probably going to get in the 16-team playoff, did the non-conference games even matter? Like your win-loss record? Because if you're fourth place team in the Big Ten, you're probably in, regardless of what your non-conference record is.
Yes and no. I mean, it's so easy to be tied for the fourth place team in the Big Ten.
Fair.
When you take a look, okay, let's take a look at the composition of the Big Ten. The traditional Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, the slightly older Big Ten, Penn State, and the new Big Ten, Oregon, Washington, USC, and then maybe Kurt Signetti gets hot for a year, or maybe Brett Bielema gets hot for a year at Illinois. It's not going to be easy. Even the USC that we've grown up with, the Reggie Bush USC team, yeah, they're going to finish in the top four of the Big Ten. The Anthony Davis USC team, yeah, they're going to finish in the top four of the Big Ten. A lot of USC teams over the last 20 years are not finishing in the top four of the Big Ten.
But again, isn't that, like sitting here on the Notre Dame side of it after, because we obviously have listened for a long time to the Notre Dame is irrelevant and all that kind of stuff. And, like when you look at where USC obviously won more national championships, much more recently than
Right.
Notre Dame. But to me, they are teetering on complete irrelevance right now. And, they're trending in that direction between the turnstile that's been their head coaching position and that athletic director position that you talked about.
Well, and this is why, as much as it may pain some people to hear this, you have to give Jack Swarbrick a ton of credit for what he was able to do with Notre Dame, getting it into this bowl situation and the playoff situation and protecting not only its ability to get into the playoffs, but protecting the school's independence as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was working through a pretty fine needle there, getting the thread in, and he was able to do that.
So if USC's not on the schedule, this is the question that we've been getting quite a bit. What would you like to see Notre Dame do with that? I mean, we obviously know that they've signed a 12-year agreement with Clemson, but like how important, like, would you rate it to make, to still get out to the West Coast, besides Stanford, like from a rivalry standpoint, what would you like to see him do?
Well, so if you're talking about you want to get to the West Coast besides Stanford, I mean, who is UCLA suddenly going to step up and fill that void? I tend to doubt it. Plus, there's not a whole lot of marquee. There's not a whole lot of marquee football right now on the West Coast, and Oregon literally is a different state than California, but it might as well be a different world than California too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you necessarily can replace that. Can you play more Shamrock Series games in places like Vegas? Sure. Of course you could do that. Then the other thing is, do you look to replace it with one of these marquee rivals like in Michigan? Well, they're in the same boat as USC. They're in a conference with a schedule that's loaded. And if we know anything about Michigan over the years, they haven't exactly loaded up their non-conference with great games. So you're going to have to try to find somebody that can be that marquee team, because there's also going to be some pressure from NBC. NBC is going to want a pretty solid schedule to put on TV.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And USC was a big part of that for NBC for the last 30 years.
Well, and as you said, just 2 years ago when 2 years ago when Caleb Williams, I was trying to make sure I had my date right. When Caleb Williams they had just one loss at that point. That was a primetime game. Like that was obviously
weren't they undefeated?
NBC.
Weren't they undefeated going into that game? Or
no, USC had lost the game before.
Okay.
I think to either Washington State or Oregon State, somebody like that.
Okay.
Decaf says he'd like to
Someone
see
look it up.
Decaf says he'd like to see Stanford go bye-bye. What do you think?
Yeah.
We hear every year that Stanford is a rival. It doesn't feel like
Never
it meets
feels
that
that way.
requirement to me.
It's a rival, much like a nail is a rival to a hammer.
That's well played.
That's the ivory tower part of Notre Dame that wants Stanford to be a rival because we've got these two great academic institutions.
Right.
Well, let's look at how Stanford's faring in the transfer portal world. And it's not faring well. And that football program, I mean, they brought in Andrew Luck to be the general manager, but they can't even find a coach. So they're going to have Frank Reich just do his old quarterback a solid and take over the reins of the program for a year. And granted, Notre Dame has lost to some bad Stanford teams in the past, including one here at the stadium not too long ago. But that's a football program teetering on irrelevance too, which is kind of sad to see because, they had some great teams there over the years.
Sure.
With Bill Walsh and Denny Green and then Harbaugh. I mean, there were some really good Stanford teams, but those are, and I guess I'll give the king of smug, David Shaw, some credit too for a while. But those were some really good Stanford teams. Those are a distant memory right now.
They were built different. Those Stanford teams they were built different.
There's Stanford teams built like Notre Dame, Michigan teams.
Right. I mean, that, you talk about power football.
Right.
Running it down your throat. That's what they love to do.
And that was kind of like Jim Harbaugh's, analytics driven, sabermetrics, like compared to the way everyone else was playing football
they were the outlier
at that point. Yeah. He like, we're not going to go that direction. We're going to go this other way and just bully people off the line. And obviously it ended up working out for.
Well, that's what made them so tough to defend because they were a little bit like Navy in that you only played a team like that once a year. And so how do you go about defending them?
Yep. Vince was right, by the way.
Uh-oh.
Credit where credit is due. Ring your bell there, Vince. USC was undefeated. Arizona took, this is 2023, a week before USC came to South Bend. Arizona took them to triple overtime.
Okay.
SC won, but then they lost to Notre Dame.
And
then it was the next week they lost to Utah. Yeah, so starting with Notre Dame, they lost 5 of their last 6 games of the regular season. But Notre Dame was there.
Yeah, they started that slide after that. I mean, Notre Dame just took their soul in that game, and it was just all downhill from there. And that's why this rivalry is so good. I mean, they totally destroyed USC season. They came in all on this high horse, pun intended, and it just did not work out. They were just remember Caleb Williams crying in the stand. There was nothing going right for USC after the Notre Dame game. It was glorious. I enjoyed watching it.
Are you hopeful, Chuck? How hopeful are you?
I think cooler heads will prevail. This is typical of negotiations, right? I mean, you have to make the situation sound as dire as possible,
right?
So that we can get this situation solved.
I will say it's so funny to me when you're on, now granted it's social media, so take that for what it's worth. But everybody who has all this inside knowledge about how these negotiations are going down and so, either Notre Dame proposed this and USC proposed this and they're both turning it down and they're both it's like, have they even talked? I'm not even convinced there's even a conversation happening.
Allegedly, they talked at the beginning of last week. We haven't seen any quotes, from either one of the athletic directors since then.
And you know what? Nor should we.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying we there was a lot of smoke going into what was supposed to be a meeting. We've seen zero smoke, black or white or, any other color that, since then.
It's the month of smoke.
That's right.
It really is.
All right. I want to ask you a couple other things before we let you go, Chuck. Pat Garity, the new basketball general manager, men's and women's. How important do you think it is for them to have an alum running the show over there for this?
I think it helps. I think you could really glean some insights from his comments the other day, Sean, and I know you're sitting right to my left, and I don't know if this one caught your attention as much as it did mine. When he was asked about transfers, he really kind of flipped it to, we're looking at developing players.
Right.
And talk more about how they're going to be focused on recruiting. And I think that's shown up from the way Micah Shrewsbury's handled things in this offseason. He's got a top 10 recruiting class right now. And I think in this era of the transfer portal, given the limitations that Notre Dame has academically, it's going to be very difficult for them to bring in quality basketball players out of the transfer portal. So they're much better off taking the approach, and Pat Garity is the perfect representative of that approach. 3-star athlete out of Monument, Colorado. Nobody paid any attention to him coming in, and he leaves as one of the more decorated Notre Dame players of the last quarter century.
Plays for like a decade in the NBA afterwards. Yeah.
So if anybody can speak to what Notre Dame can do for a player, it's Pat Garity. Now, what I'll be interested in is the same thing that your little side hustle will be interested in too, and that is, how does he manage that women's basketball program?
Right.
What kind of knowledge does he have of that sport? And is it easier for Notre Dame? I mean, they brought in 5 transfers here not in the off season now for the women's basketball program, but really only one of them's a double-digit scorer. None of them really move the needle, so to speak. Can he help Niele Ivey in this era of going out and getting more recruits and navigating the portal? They did get a great recruit in Bella Ragon, the young lady out of the state of Georgia.
Right.
I think that's going to be a great help to the program. 6'2" small forward type. They need to be able to bring in some bigs.
And that's, especially from the transfer portal, that's something kind of following this portal even more closely, obviously, this year than last year, because of how much they needed to fill, many more voids this year than last year. Apparently, like when you're talking about the NIL aspect and the transfer portal, any of those forwards, like if you're 6'3" and you've got any proven track record at the college level in the women's game, you're going to get a lot of money thrown your way. It's very competitive. Yeah.
And the charge for Pat Garity is just, to me, so different for the women's program and the men's program, right? I mean, the women's program is contender, national championship contender, year in and year out. You've got to keep them there and then get them to the precipice. And the men's program is just in a completely different position. And I don't know that they'll ever be at the position that the women's program is. So it's like, it's such a different job to have one guy doing it. Like, I understand why they did it, but it's just, It's so different. So different.
Well, it's wild how different the expectations are for the two programs, number one. And number two, I just think it's, and he admitted, quite frankly, in one of his opening comments, that it sounds a little overwhelming at first, but he thinks that he can handle it. So we'll see. I mean, I'm sure if he can't handle it, they'll have to reach into the coffers and give him a support system. But I'm just going back to before the position was created. Can you imagine the headaches for Micah Shrewsbury and Niele Ivey having to handle recruiting, transfer portal, and who's going to get what money and where is that money coming from? Especially in this environment where, unless something has happened while we've done this podcast, the House settlement has not come out yet. And money's just flying from all kinds of places. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know who's paying these people, but obviously somebody is. and trying to balance that. And oh yeah, by the way, be a basketball coach.
100%. Well, and the total monies that you have for women's basketball versus the total monies you have for men's basketball, you can get a lot more you get a lot more bang for your buck, I would imagine, in the women's game than you do in the men's game, just dollars and cents and what you can bring in and all of those different things. So it's just fascinating to me, again, how different these two jobs are, and yet it's the same guy that's going to be doing it, and what that looks like.
Well, and I asked him a question about because they are so different, about the differences, and he really, from what he said anyway, he didn't see any. So I mean, it feels like from his perspective, it's more, it's I guess sort of less about the difference in the games, whereas it's more about just sort of the business side. Is that kind of what you took from it? Just making sure the numbers align for each team and where they need to be going in any given year.
Yeah, he is not there to be the recruiting coordinator.
Right. Because that's the other thing with these GM positions is each school views the position a little bit differently.
Right. And from the way he explained things, I don't think he's there to be a recruiting coordinator. Neil and Micah are going to have the final say on that. He might be able to help them. Okay, let's look and see what's available in the portal, or who's available in the portal, or who we think is, and take some of their focus off of that. But mainly he's there to help balance the dollars and cents and the other things that need coordinating with a program, whether it's the medical or the analytics or the strength and conditioning, all those things to just kind of help take the burden off the coaches.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, because that's what Neil Ivey said when we talked to her, is just like, it lets us coach now, because they don't have to be thinking about those things nearly as much.
You started with talking about how long we've both been doing this. Can look at the number of personnel that are associated with a football program or a basketball program today as compared to when we started, Sean.
Right. Very true.
Unbelievable how many people are associated with these programs. I don't know what they all do.
Well, yeah, I mean, you didn't have the analysts in 1985, right? No. I mean, and even in 2005, you didn't have any of this stuff.
Well, now they can all coach on this field too. Like,
exactly.
You can get analysts out there. You can have Joe Blow off the street apparently out there coaching guys during practice in football, and I assume basketball as well. I mean, it's kind of the wild, wild west of coaches out there now.
Well, the coach to player, or I shouldn't even say the coach to player ratio for a basketball team, the support staff to player ratio is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. In basketball for sure.
I know. It's insane when you think about it. All right. I wanted to ask you about baseball as well. The selection came out for the field of 64 yesterday, third straight year. Notre Dame didn't make it. They, worked their way onto the bubble in Sean Stifler's third year toward the end of the season. Based on that little head bob, I think you and I probably feel about, and worth noting, Chuck and I, basically over the last 25 years, we're the two guys who have, it's probably us and Tim Priester who have seen probably the three people in this market who have seen the most actual Notre Dame baseball up close. And
probably Matt Freeman. I'll throw Matt Freeman in there too.
Yeah, more recently. Yeah, right. Yeah. But I guess my point, Chuck and I were the last two radio voices of Notre Dame baseball, and they discontinued radio broadcasts a few years back. But so I know Chuck feels, a certain way about things, just like I feel a certain way about things. So I don't know. So what do you think? Year three, did it feel like they moved the needle enough this year in his third year?
Well, did they move the needle enough? They didn't make the NCAA tournament. So what is the standard for Notre Dame baseball? Because the three greatest coaches in Notre Dame baseball history Okay. One of them is now with the Milwaukee Brewers. One of them is now with Florida State. And the other is coaching South Carolina after winning the title at LSU.
Right.
And two of those coaches got Notre Dame to the College World Series. And Murph overachieved greatly during his tenure here, especially considering the facilities or lack thereof. Now,
he got the stadium built before he left.
He did get a stadium built before he left. It's the same stadium standing now.
30 plus years later now.
True.
Yes.
Some minor modifications. Yeah.
Very minor compared to what you see in other places.
100%.
Especially in the Atlantic Coast Conference. It was one thing when Notre Dame was playing in the Big East, and you do a game sitting behind a backstop at Rutgers. Just Fred Hill banging the pipe with a rock.
Rutgers and Seton Hall, the two gems of the Big East in terms of facilities.
I remember those stories you told me.
Throw Boston College in there back in the day, too.
And Trees Field at Pitt.
Yeah.
So...
where they had an old section of, I think, basketball bleachers that they threw behind the backstop that they had cut out.
They bring them out from Fitzgerald Fieldhouse in the spring and put them there. But it's one thing to compare with those places. Now you are recruiting in a conference where you go to Clemson or Florida State or North Carolina, and you see the investment that they've made in baseball, which is one of the reasons these schools are hosting regionals this weekend. It's not just because their baseball teams are good. It's because they're given the resources to do it. So I'm not putting all the blame on Sean. However,
Stifler.
Stifler, not you, Stiers.
I mean, we blame him for everything anyway.
However, that said, this team got off to a terrible start. I mean, they were getting 10 run in ACC games by, now granted, the leaders of the conference, Georgia Tech and Florida State and Wake Forest, but you can't just get run off the field. So what changed for the team? Well, the fact that they started playing the lesser teams in the ACC, that helped. So the schedule helped somewhat. And then young players started to grow up. Carson Tinney started the year probably not fully rehabbed from the knee injury that he had suffered last year. When he hit his stride, boy, did he hit it. I think you could make a case for him being an All-American catcher. Jack Riddell finishes the season 7-4. Well, at one point he was 1-3. So he won 6 out of his last 7 starts. But you're on the bubble. You're going into the ACC tournament. You've worked your way onto this bubble. And all you have to do is beat Boston College. And you don't get that done?
And they're the 14th
seed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You don't deserve to be in the NCAA.
Yeah. Nope. Agreed. Because we had talked about going into that, we kind of took it for granted that they would beat Boston College. And then, maybe they have to win maybe 1 or 2 other games. Basically talking about second and third round, kind of forgetting about Boston College. Maybe that's what Notre Dame did too.
And Boston College, by the way, was leading North Carolina in the semifinals in the 7th inning, but they ran out of pitching. The guy that they had out on the mound was, I think I saw he threw over 140 pitches in like 4 days or so. Pretty ridiculous to think about the fact that he was on. But I mean, they just basically ran out of pitching, but they knocked Virginia out of the NCAA tournament in the second round as well.
Yeah.
BC did.
Yeah, BC cost the ACC some money.
Yeah, they did. They did. I just, they finished 11th place. When you look at their pitching and their hitting and where it was in the conference, they ranked like 11th, 12th. I mean, like what they are is what they were based, they made at least nominal improvement to get to the bubble, I think, this year. But again, it's year 3. And I just, like you talk about the facilities, and it's all completely valid points. But did Link Jarrett have that much more at his disposal in either a roster or facilities than what Sean Stifler has right now?
Well, from roster standpoint, he did, but Link Jarrett's the one who put that roster together.
Right.
Well, and that's like what he inherited and what he finished with
Right.
in his year 3.
But this is why Florida State came after him with oodles and oodles of money and said, "Here, please come home.
Exactly.
Please be our coach," because he had proven it. I mean, Notre Dame knew it got a gem when it got Link Jarrett away from UNC Wilmington. I don't think they knew how much of a gem they had.
Agreed.
That guy is one of the greatest coaches I've been around.
Yeah. And there's no debating that. Like
his philosophy was, I mean, just what he was able to do. And I always found it very comical. Maybe not comical, but like he would be out there with his band stand in the dugout. Like just, it was an orchestra. Like he was the conductor of the orchestra out there. And it just so happened he used a bandstand for all of his information that he used on game day.
But I mean, honestly, that's the difference. Like he had a very specific offensive approach. So specific that he didn't want to talk about it in detail. Like anytime, we had him on, it was a very specific offensive approach, but you could see it in the way their hitters went about their at-bats from at-bat to at-bat over the course of the game. Honestly, it was very reminiscent of like Maneri coach teams, the way that those guys, as you went the second, third, and fourth time through the lineup, the way they would adjust at the plate, they were like Jarrett's guys were never fooled at the plate.
No,
right.
And that's why they pushed Mississippi State that ended up winning a national championship to the brink in the super regional. And it's obviously why they broke through the next year as well.
Notre Dame's got enough assistant ADs over there that they can make decisions that I don't need to. But I think there certainly has to be some pressure looking forward here to year 4 when you've got most of the team back and it's a talented team. I think they showed that the second half of the year.
Mm-hmm.
There's no excuse for the slow start now. You've got everybody coming back. You should be able as a coach to communicate your vision to them, much like we're talking about the communication abilities of Link Jarrett and Paul Maneri.
Right.
It's on Sean Stifler now to get this team to the NCAA tournament in year 4.
I agree. It's
you're right there. I mean,
tournament or bust next year.
Yeah, because they were in the conversation this year. And I think, I don't know if we would have had that discussion at the beginning of the year, like before the year started, like, this Notre Dame team, they're going to be on the bubble to get into the tournament. I don't know that we would have said that. So I'll give him, now the ending wasn't great, obviously, specific to the Boston College game. The ending of the season was great. They got to build on that though. You can't get there, not make it, and then fall backwards. You know what I mean? And I know they have a lot of young talent. Hopefully they can retain it and add to it. But there's obviously some holes to fill too.
Well, that's the thing. Can they retain it?
Yeah.
We haven't seen the portal open up yet for college baseball. So can they retain it? And can they build on it? The fact of the matter is they've got this wonderful pitcher coming in from Valparaiso High School to add to some of the local talent they have. And I will say this, it was fun to see some of the local players like Brady Gumpf and Jace Lee, I thought had pretty solid seasons. I think they did what you would hope that they would do. So hopefully that engenders a little bit more fan interest too in Notre Dame baseball, because some of those crowds, can
you even use that word?
Yeah.
Well, especially this spring, the weather was just awful all spring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Remember MCI, that old phone carrier used to have friends and family?
Yeah.
Those were the
That's
assemblies.
who was there. That's right. Like the old girlfriend section. That's right. I think that, again, like Jarrett's thing was the hitting. Stifler has a pitching background.
Yeah.
I think that's something that he should be able to control. And I think that, they've had ERAs over 5, I think, each of the last 2 seasons. It's something that, because like even though Jarrett was a hitting guy, you look at the ERAs in comparison when Ristano was running that pitching staff, like they were one of the top pitching teams in the ACC as well. Those 2 years when they went to Super Regional.
Chuck Ristano was a great pitching coach.
He was.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And they had a decent year at Navy this year. I don't know how closely you looked at that. They dominated Army during the regular season, Navy did, and then they had to play Army in their postseason tournament at the end, and Army bumps them out in their season. But they were right around 500, which is pretty good for that level of team.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, considering the schedule that they're playing.
Yeah. Chuck, appreciate you doing this. The first time we've had you on. We need to do it more
I
often.
think we do.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm basically here to be talked to. That's
Does your wife agree with that?
she's not home yet, so
Okay,
sure.
well, there
You're in great shape then.
Absolutely.
So, is Chuck sticking around for rapid fire, or is he?
No, I'm 88 now. The game. You've had me for an hour, Vince. I mean,
Hey.
if you keep me for longer than that, then I ask to get paid.
And
That's
I think
fair.
I wasn't expecting to go an hour, so I really do appreciate you taking.
Gone for you, anything, Vince.
That's fair. That's fair. Hey,
Vince DiCarlo.
Exactly.
yeah. Well, I'll see you on Thursday, and it'll be very interesting to see my vested interest running in the slow heat because of a dropped baton during. Sectionals.
I saw that. I was going through my performance list, and so Vince's son runs for Penn High School,
Right.
and he's in the 4x400 relay. That was the last thing I was working on before I came up with this show. And I was looking at the performance list, and the team that set the standard last year, the team that won the 400 meter 4x4 in the regional last year, is in the 9 slot this year.
Yes, the fastest slow team, because they lost about 6 seconds because of a dropped baton during sectionals.
Oof.
And so they're gonna have to run against the clock if they want to get out. So
So you're just making my job tougher because now I have to pay attention to the slow heat.
you have to pay attention to the slow heat. Yeah, that's correct. I just wanted to give you the heads up on that one. They were neck and neck with Adams and dropped baton. So the last 2 legs did phenomenal work to get them from 6th place up to 2nd place, but still, it was not great.
No,
It was a rough day. It was a rough day. So
well,
anyway, so a little fodder
on Thursday.
Little fodder for Thursday for you for the broadcast, sir.
From a little fodder.
All right. Thanks, Chuck.
You're welcome, guys. Thank
Talk
you.
to you later.
See you,
Bye-bye.
Chuck.
The one and only Chuck Freeby, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
Great to have you on.
fantastic. I love it. I love it. Listen, they do such good work in the local high school scene. There's no doubt about it. And the fact that they're broadcasting softball games this year, baseball games, track meets. I mean, come on. What area has somebody that's going to cover a high school track meet?
I know.
Like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? So those are sports that don't usually get kind of like football, awesome, basketball, totally get that. But like a track meet like that, and they do such a good job just covering those track meets too. So it is really cool. And I know my family really enjoys watching those. And I'm sure there's all kinds of families locally that enjoy that as well. So
Absolutely.
kudos to those guys.
Like you said, track doesn't get a whole lot of,
no,
if any, coverage.
they don't. And it's
what they're getting.
I still have, like, screen recorded, his call of the 4x4 from last year when they won the regional and got to, my kid got interviewed and all that fun stuff. So it's just fun to watch, and they do such a good job, and they take it so seriously and professionally and all of that. So looking forward to another one on Thursday, and hopefully they don't drop the baton.
All right. Chuck Freeby, Angelo DiCarlo, sportsmichiana.com is where you can find them. They've got, as Chuck said, plenty of prep coverage, Notre Dame coverage. They've got their own podcast as well, I believe, more like once the football season.
Yeah, they do a countdown, or what is it? Drive to the game, I think is what they call it.
Right.
So that's always a fun one to listen to as well.
Yep. Okay, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go, baby.
Fill in the blank. EA Sports released the covers for their college football 26 game. It's blank that Marcus Freeman and Jeremiah Love are among a slew of coaches and players who are on the cover of the deluxe edition this year.
Now, first of all, it's appropriate because Jeremiah Love is a Heisman Trophy contender and Marcus Freeman is one of the top coaches in college football. So it makes sense. Then I saw the actual picture and I realized that maybe even you and I could have been on the cover because they got a lot of random people on there. They got a lot of players. They got a lot of coaches. They got former players. They got, I don't think I saw any everybody coaches, yeah. The cheerleaders, fans. I mean, there's probably 50 different people on the cover of the deluxe edition. I don't know what the regular edition looks like, but the deluxe edition
The regular edition is Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, Ohio State and Alabama. That's it. And they are the two guys who are standing at the front of the group shot on the deluxe edition.
You know what? They had really good freshman campaigns. Obviously, they're two of the best players in the country. Okay. I mean, I get it. That's fine. But yeah, Jeremiah Love is right in between both of them.
Right.
With the signature heart by his
hands. And then Marcus Freeman is standing right
over his shoulder. So, I mean, if you're not going to be on the regular cover, I mean, you're right there in the middle of the deluxe cover. So it's appropriate.
Very appropriate. Very appropriate. I was a little disappointed when I heard that Jeremiah Love didn't make the regular cover. Like you said, those other guys, okay, great years last year. I really felt like, especially considering, like, if you're going to put Jeremiah Smith on there, why not just put Jeremiah Love and Jeremiah Smith and have two guys who played in the national championship game last year?
And it's what's funny is looking at the deluxe edition, the head coach who just won a national championship
is even kind of
way off in the corner.
No, that was really weird.
It's way in the back.
You know what else was weird though? Why is Tim Tebow on the cover?
So is Reggie Bush.
Was he? I didn't see Reggie.
He's wearing I was
looking for where's Waldo's? There were some other
he's wearing
guys
like a USC, like not a letter jacket, but kind of like a letter jacket kind of a deal. He's off. If you're looking at it, he's off to the left. So there are a few different former players on there. There was a real heavy set guy who's not wearing a uniform. I assume he's a former player. I'm not sure who it was. I'm sure somebody will get me on that one. But yeah, it's just a weird conglomeration of people in this picture for the
I thought so too.
Edition. Yeah.
Maybe Tebow's on because the deluxe edition is like, is that like, do they have like the dynasty mode?
Maybe,
or like the old teams or something?
I didn't even know there was a deluxe edition. I got the regular game, and it's got all the bells and whistles. I don't know what else.
There had to be a deluxe edition.
Well, right? Yeah, that's fair. I just don't know what else you need. Like, you can play the game. You can play. Yeah, what do you need? I don't know. I will not be partaking. I'm the guy that gets the game and I'll keep it for a few years. Like, I don't have to get it.
Does Dylan play?
He and I played the new one. Yeah.
Did you?
Last year. Yeah. When it came out. Yeah. We had a lot of fun.
Will he get this year's then, or?
It's a great question. He's going to be busier this fall than he was last fall. So, but I don't know.
He's in college.
What do kids do in dorm rooms these days?
What are you talking about? Like, I mean, that's my point. It's like they're going to be in the dorms. They're probably going to be playing all the time. They're not going to tell you though.
Here's what I'll say: he won't have his own game system. He'll be mooching. He'll be the moocher.
Okay,
because the game system's not leaving this house. So
fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Uh-huh.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Josh Pate says it's complete garbage that Notre Dame can get a first-round playoff bye, and college football is bending over backwards to appease Notre Dame, all because the Irish are not in a conference.
Clickbait. Clickbait. That's what it is. Like, come on, Josh. Really? Like, isn't he the one that was just singing Notre Dame's praises, and now all of a sudden they're complete garbage that they could get a first-round bye? Like,
it's like we're going right back to the...
I don't understand. Like, dude, pick a lane and stay in it. That's what I would say to Josh Pate. Pick a lane and stay in it, dude. Like, either you're on board, like, so you're okay with Notre Dame playing at home, destroying IU, and then, going to the neutral site and beating Georgia and beating Penn. So you're okay with that, but you're not okay if they have a month off and they get a bye and they don't have to play at home. Like, I don't understand why that's such a big deal, because they don't have automatic buys anymore. This benefits more than just Notre Dame, by the way. The SEC could get 2 buys. The Big Ten could get 2 buys. So is that complete garbage too, that they can get a couple of buys per conference? Come on, dude. Like, just stay in one lane and stay there.
If USC could be independent right now, do you think that they would take it? Like, they could, like, if the financials, think USC would jump on that right now?
You could replace any school in the country and put it into that slot.
That's exactly right.
And the answer would be yes.
Miami, Florida State, Penn State,
anybody.
They'd all sign up for it.
Yes.
They all would. If they could get a TV contract
that
guarantees them the money that Notre Dame gets, and, look at the payout that Notre Dame gets, like, they don't have to share, any of that with conferences. I mean, that's obviously the Notre Dame side of it. Like they would all take not being tethered to a conference if they could, but they don't have that option. And Notre Dame was fine with the format that they had last year.
They wrote it.
Yes, that's exactly right. Jack Swarbrick helped come up with the format that they had this year. The same one that had them go to the national championship game, by the way. The new format, by the way, would have made Notre Dame's path to the championship a little bit more difficult if they had it last year. So now they've got that format this year, and there's zero guarantees, but it's not Notre Dame that has to be appeased. The Power Four conferences, and obviously specifically the Big Ten and the SEC, they're the ones that have to be appeased in all this. That's who's being appeased in all this. It's not Notre Dame. Nobody's bending over backwards to help Notre Dame. All the conference commissioners and Pete Bavacqua had to vote unanimously to approve this thing. And guess what? They all voted unanimously. It's not like this was a close vote and, like Notre Dame was strong-arming somebody. Notre Dame was an afterthought in this whole thing. They all realized that, oh, hey, maybe we need to work these buys a little bit differently because it would benefit us, and us again being the Power Four conferences, not Notre Dame. This was not about appeasing Notre Dame in any of this. This was again, like the strong arms of the SEC and the Big Ten were the ones who wielded this whole thing.
And I'll tell you right now, if Notre Dame ever puts a for sale sign out in front of the Golden Dome and says, hey, we're going to go to the highest bidder, whatever conference wants us, there's going to be multiple bids, okay? Every conference in the country is going to want Notre Dame. So that's not a thing, first of all. Second of all, every one of these conference commissioners and the college football playoff and whoever you want to lump into this particular comment, you can do, they all want Notre Dame involved because it brings more money. Notre Dame brings money. That's why Notre Dame will never have a problem scheduling, regardless of the fact that they're in a conference or not, because these schools aren't going to turn down the money that Notre Dame brings them when Notre Dame comes to town. It will never happen. That's why Notre Dame is so secure in their independence. Nobody's bending over backwards for Notre Dame. Notre Dame is paying them money inadvertently. They want them in the thing. They want them in the playoff. They want them there because more people are going to watch. You're going to make more money the next time that the TV contract comes up for sale. It's easy. That they want Notre Dame because Notre Dame brings money. And you can talk to whoever hates Notre Dame, whatever. They all have one thing in common: money.
Yep.
That's all what it comes down to.
And clickbait.
100%. Because we're talking about it because that's a trash take. That's just a bad take.
It really is.
I mean, come on, dude. Stop.
Yeah. Low-hanging fruit.
Really is, man. I realize it's May, almost June, but that's bad. That's just bad.
The SEC meetings are underway this week, and discussion of what the next college football playoff format, the next one, the one that starts in 2026, not even the one that we just got.
Hard to keep it straight,
about.
Sean.
I know. That's probably the biggest item on the agenda this week. And the auto bids that come with the new format, are probably the most divisive topic right now. So you got SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. He says the 4-4-2-2-1 proposal that would give the SEC and the Big Ten 4 automatic bids could actually cost those conferences bids when it comes to the college football playoff. He points to the fact over the last 11 years, an average of 5 SEC teams and 5.3 Big Ten teams have ranked in the top 10 at the end of the season. So do you buy or sell this argument?
Okay, there's so much to cut up here, okay? So I'm not sure how 5.3 and what was the other number? Another number
5.
was 5 something, right? That's more than 10. And I don't know how you can average that, but whatever. Second of all,
Hold it. Back up. What do you mean you don't know?
like he said,
of the top
5 SEC teams and 5.3 Big Ten teams. That's an average of over 10 in the top 10.
No, top 16.
Or top 16. Okay, sorry, my bad. I see 10. There's a lot of numbers in this I'm looking at. So I apologize. But What I will say is just because, first of all, why do you need your automatic bids then if you're averaging 5 teams in the top 16? You'd be better off not having automatic bids, and then you're going to get your 5 teams in. That's number one. Number two, just because you have 4 automatic bids doesn't mean you're not going to get a 5th team in. It doesn't cut off at 4. So if you've got 5 teams in the top 16, you're going to get all 5 teams in. So again, why do you need the automatic 4 bids? If you're that confident that you're going to get those teams in, if you're going to be spouting these numbers at me that you're going to get that, well, we've averaged 5.3 teams in the top 16 in the last 11 years. Okay, put your money where your mouth is then and get rid of the the automatic bids.
So he's obviously doing his best sales job to try to make us, all believe that this is, the way it's in. The 4-4-2-2-1, by the way, is 4 SEC auto bids, 4 Big Ten auto bids, and then 2 each for the Big 12 and ACC, 1 for the best group of 6 team, and then you would have 3 at-large bids after that Notre Dame would fall into after that. I mean, again, he's doing his best sales job. He's got the Big 12 and the ACC arguing with him right now, and they're mad about their 2 bids, which to a point I get, but it's also like, well, I mean, I would be if I'm the commissioner of one of those schools, but at the same time, it's like, well, where's the track record? Like what has your conference actually done over the year to say that you deserve more than that? Because like the Big 12 average is 2.4, the ACC is 2.1. So, I mean, they're both right on that average of what they're going to be getting in all of this. The bottom line in this, though, is the reason they want this 4-4-2-2-1 apparently is because they want to get the auto bids guaranteed at 4, and then they're going to go to a 9-game conference schedule, which means more inventory for ESPN, and then they want to start doing this SEC Big Ten, like the non-conference, and we'll talk about non-conference games here in a minute. So basically, they're trying to they want this as their cushion so they can extort more money from the TV networks when it's all said and done. That's what it comes down to.
Right. Again, all about the money.
Right.
But if you're so confident that your league is so stinking good, let the chips fall where they may, man.
Right. Because we hear every year how great these 2 conferences are, especially the SEC.
Right.
And the shine has fallen off the SEC in the last couple of years. It's been proven now that, especially these last couple of years, and I think it's going to be proven even more after Nick Saban's retirement, that it's really a lot of hype. I mean, for a long time, it was a pretty good conference, but it was also buoyed by the best team in the country as long as Nick Saban was down there in Tuscaloosa. So it just makes no sense that you want auto bids for anything other than your conference champion when, like the NCAA tournament has been doing just fine for years and years and years.
Right.
And everyone has to qualify. They have to earn their way in to that thing. Not just an artificial,
you're right,
you're ranked in the top 4, you get in.
There's going to be some years where that 4th place SEC or that 4th place Big Ten team is just not a very good football team. I mean, that's going to happen. It won't happen often, but it will happen. And if you're talking about bringing in the top 16 teams, the reality is if you win your conference, you're going to get in. You don't need to have an automatic bid that says you're going to get in. Mm-hmm. If you win the SEC, if you win the ACC, if you win whatever, you're in. I don't have a problem with that. And if you want to basically for the Big 12 and the ACC say that if you win your conference, you're automatically in, I don't have a problem with that. To be honest with you, the only automatic bid that needs to be in place is the group of 16. Because they're not always going to be in the top 16. So if you still want to have that piece of the puzzle, then you make sure that there's one slot left for that group of 6 team so that they get in. Other than that, take the top 15. Like, I don't care what conference they come from. Earn your spot into the dance, man. That's what they're making Notre Dame do. They're basically saying, well, if you're in the top 12 or you're in the top 14 or whatever the number they come up with, you're in.
See, but that's part that, I mean, it's part of the problem, because really, like, they're going reality show, game show route by doing this. It's like, yeah, it's more about the like like this extra stuff that you're putting on TV, because they also want to do these, the 3rd versus 6th place team and the 4 versus 5, and have these extra play in games that would be on campus and all that stuff. Apparently, they don't even have guaranteed TV partners for that. And, but again, it's like more money trying to create more drama, which again is like what I'm saying, like reality TV. It's not even about that it actually matters. It's not the actual, even, being the 4th place team, because they want to still kind of add something to it to give the 5th place team a chance there at the end.
Oh my God.
So
it's just, I suppose they're going to do that instead of conference championships at some point. Like,
I think so.
Because at this point, conference championships are a giant waste of time. I think we can all agree on that.
Right. And this goes back to the whole thing with Pate that I didn't even mention, that I know I've mentioned before. Like, people want to hold it against Notre Dame that they're not playing in a conference championship game. When nobody made any of these conferences have a conference championship game until about like 30 years ago. Like, that wasn't even a thing. And then the SEC had theirs. It was a big success. The whole thing started to grow. Other conferences did it, even though at times there were teams like Kansas State who got screwed out of being in the BCS championship game because they lost in a conference championship game. Like, nobody made any of these conferences create those conference championship games. They did it for more TV money.
Money
is what they did it for. That's exactly right.
Yep.
That's exactly
right. I don't know what these bigger conferences are going to do with their bids and how it's going to work. I find it personally, and I get where you're coming. Not where you're coming from, but the way you explained it as to why they're going about this, to have that cushion and all of that. At the end of the day, it's real simple. If you're in the top 16, you're in. If you're not, you're out. Like, I don't see why that's so complicated. Why do we got to make it more complicated?
It shouldn't be, but it is.
I know.
So Sankey also talked a little bit about schools like Southern Cal that are looking to go back, looking to back out of marquee non-conference games. Don't walk away, is what Sankey said. He said, quote, "When people are canceling games because of the selection process, that directly impacts the regular season," end quote. And that is blank.
I mean, it's accurate. I actually, I hate to say, I kind of agree with what he's saying there.
One thing we probably agree with him on.
I mean, I agree with him on that. You should not dummy down or water down your non-conference schedule because of what your conference schedule is. I'm sorry. No one wants to watch a bunch of 1AA teams play against these Power 4 teams. Nobody wants to see that. That's not, number one, it's not going to fill your stadium. Number two, it's not good TV. The TV people are going to be pissed off about it. They're not going to want to put those games on TV. So I agree with them on that front. Like, the first weekend of the season, there's a bunch of out-of-conference games. They're good games, and they're going to take those away. They're going to take those away.
And this is why, like, if you're a Southern Cal fan, are you fired up about Georgia Southern and Missouri State kicking off your schedule? Like,
exactly.
You'd rather have those two powder puffs just to guarantee you're getting a couple wins than playing Notre Dame, because as you've said, like, you do what you're supposed to in your conference and you finish in the top 4, at the very least, you're going to be in, one of those play-in games or whatever, which gives you a chance. And the fact that you played Notre Dame doesn't matter. If anything, it boosts your resume.
Yeah.
One way or the other. And the fact that people are trying to run away from this. Now, the fact that Sankey is saying this, here's the problem that I have with Greg Sankey saying it, because to a point, obviously, like, the sentiment I agree with. But the problem is, it would help if you weren't the guy who was, one of the 2 or 3 people who are most directly responsible for the downfall of college football over the last 3 years by yanking teams away from perfectly good conferences, that if the Big 12 were still the old Big 12 and the Pac-12 still existed and the SEC was still the SEC and the Big 10 was the Big 10 of just 2 years ago, we would all be better off for it. And nobody would be talking about pulling out of these games right now. But you've like created this monster
Right.
for selfish purposes. And now all of this stuff we've been talking about, you continue to be selfish with all this because you just want to have your cake and eat it too. So that's the problem that I have, like hearing Greg Sankey talk about it, because he's as responsible as anyone for just the, this mess. Obviously take NIL out of it. I'm not blaming Greg Sankey or Petiti or, like any of those guys for NIL, but like for the state of college football and where all these teams are completely out of geographical whack. Like if you hadn't yanked all these teams away from conferences that were doing just fine, we wouldn't have to have this conversation about teams like USC and Nebraska. Nebraska pulled out of that Tennessee, like we wouldn't have to have these conversations about that stuff going on.
Well, and isn't he the commissioner of the conference that in like week 10 or somewhere along those lines, everybody in the conference plays like a 1AA team?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like three-quarters of the way through the season. There's a weekend where it's just like, well, these games suck. Like they're terrible because the SEC has like a gentleman's agreement that they all play these garbage teams, and I shouldn't say garbage teams, non-competitive teams, for the SEC.
They're all bye games. Yeah.
They all play them in the same weekend. So like that's your conference, man. So you guys could think outside the box a little bit more and maybe play somebody that's a little bit better at that point, but you don't. So again, probably another person that should just pick a lane and stay in it. But, seems to be a trend.
So there's going to be more discussion by the NCAA on the possibility of college football going to just one transfer portal per year. The 3 periods that are being discussed right now are January, March, and April. So if they go to just one college football transfer portal, which of those months would you choose?
I mean, this is really tough because I think the obvious answer is none of the above, and it should be like February. They should wait for the playoff to happen. Then they should have the portal for everybody, not just the teams that were in because I realize if you're in the playoff, you get some extra time and things like that. But they should wait for everybody until Feb. And again, it's not perfect because semesters have started at other schools. So like I get why it doesn't work.
And that's why to me January should be out.
And January, okay, that one should be out, you said?
Yes. I think they should just do it in the spring. At the end of spring ball, that would be my solution. Just you kind of have to eat it,
Yeah.
Like I guess technically, just like guys who come out of high school who enroll early, like they, I guess they get announced now, but like back in the day, they used to show up on campus before the official signing day even came around in February.
Oh, yeah.
So you could probably just go ahead and leave and transfer and, enroll in class. I guess you couldn't, go through spring practice or anything like that. But I guess my point is, because obviously in a perfect world, you do it in January, like you do it now in December January, so that guys can, transfer and go through spring practice and all that stuff. But if everyone's in the same boat, if you take away the winter transfer portal and you do it in April, then, nobody can transfer and go join their new team in the spring. Everybody just does it in the summer. Everyone's in the same boat. So that's why I would go that direction.
I think there's an argument to be made for every option that's on the table. Honestly, I think the expansion of the playoff has obviously hurt the portal, and you're going to see more and more guys jumping off of playoff teams and heading into the portal. If you're going to have an earlier portal window, right? You're going to see that more and more,
which is to me another reason not to do it in January.
I get that. Spring ball is so important now, though, and if you're going to bring in transfers, you'd like.
But is it more important than fall again, like if nobody can do it,
but it's still if nobody can do it and everybody's on the same page, then so be it. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're gonna what you'll end up having is December graduates transferring automatically because they're graduate transfers and they can do whatever they want. Those are the only ones that are going to end up at a new school for the spring. Well, you know what? That's an advantage that happens if you can graduate. So I'd be okay with that too. So I agree with you. If these are the options that are on the table, I would do it after spring ball as well. and everybody has to follow the same rules, you know. But there's no perfect answer to any of this because of the way that the playoff is and when spring semesters start and all of those different things. There's no good answer. There's no good answer.
I know. And that's the problem. That's why the whole, like the month of December now, especially with the expanded playoffs, when you've got the early signing period,
yep.
And you've obviously got coaching moves being made, you know, and like assistants are interviewing in different places and all these different things. That's why it just really feels like the transfer portal just shouldn't be there with all these other things that are going on, especially now if you're going to go to 16 teams
right
next year, you know, being involved in the college football playoff. That's that many more teams that are going to be involved in the postseason. So, you know, in a meaningful postseason.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's why I don't think the winter is a good time to do it.
Don't understand.
Well, my watch doesn't understand you.
Just make everybody lump it and go to the spring.
It'll be interesting to see what they choose because I agree right now there's just a lot of ambiguity about when people can go in, when they can't go in, you know, all of these different things. Oh, I'm going to try spring ball. I'm not going to try spring ball, you know, like all of these different things. And, you know, your position on the depth chart, your position on the team can obviously change from the beginning of spring ball to the end of spring ball. But you have a team like Notre Dame that went to the national championship game in spring was almost more of a burden than it was a benefit, I think, in a lot of ways. You know, the only benefit Notre Dame got out of it is they got their quarterback raised from 3 to 2. They didn't really have any of their starting linemen, you know, like younger guys got reps and things like that. Those things are all important. Don't get me wrong. But realistically, from this is important for 2025, did they really get a whole lot accomplished? Outside of Chris Ash talking to some defensive, like coaching some guys up and, you know, Jaywan Sider. Okay, I get all that. But, like, I don't know. Like, it was almost kind of a waste. And it was truncated because of the transfer portal window.
Because of, the portal. And
they started later and they ended earlier.
And everything else. Yeah.
You know, this is the first time they've ever had practice after the spring game. You know, like, I don't know.
Very weird. It was a weird spring.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Brent Musburger turned 86 yesterday. Vince, do you miss Brent Musburger calling college football games?
Yeah, I like Brent Musburger. You're looking live.
You are looking live.
Yes. I mean, he's got a catchphrase, right? It's in Cars the movie. If you watch that.
Is it really? I didn't realize that.
It's Brent Mustang Burger.
Nice.
He announces the big race.
Is it actually him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Very cool.
is. Yeah.
Very cool.
But yeah, I miss. I'm old school, so like I miss the older guys, and so yes, absolutely, I miss Brent Musburger.
Yeah, I do as well. And like we went from Keith Jackson to Brent Musburger, and like think about how long those two guys did it. And I'm sorry, there's just not like of all the guys calling like the number one booth right now. Chris Fowler, serviceable job. I'm not saying he's bad.
Sure.
Serviceable. But like it is nowhere even approaching, just like the big game voice, you know, like Joe Buck has a big game NFL voice or even baseball voice for that matter, even though he doesn't do baseball anymore. Like you turn on a game and, you know, and Joe Buck is doing the game, you know, it's a big game, like him or not.
Correct.
Tommy says Fowler sucks. But like college football has lacked that voice since Brent Musburger left college football. And so 100% I miss him. That's amazing. 86 years old. Still doing his thing. I think he's still doing his gambling thing out there in the desert and the whole thing.
Good for him. Because he was doing all kinds of commercials for that kind of stuff. And he was doing like
did
shows
the Raiders for a few years
about gambling. Yeah.
Toonsis wants to know if this is live. No, this is just a show. I guess
we're here for
did we just prove that it was live by
pulling it up? I think so.
Holding up a newspaper there.
Yeah. Hold up a newspaper.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for today. We've got a little bit of an abbreviated week.
It's going to be a weird week. Yeah. Agreed.
Whoop.
What?
I might went. I think I'm still
You're
here.
back.
For some
You're
reason.
back.
Okay. So Vince and I will be here tomorrow. Long story short, we'll talk about what the rest of the week will look like after that.
We know we'll be here tomorrow.
But Toonses, we are live.
Yes.
We are looking live, at least for now.
See what you did there. See what you did there.
All right. Appreciate you being here. Thanks again to Chuck Freeby for hanging out with us for almost a full hour. Yes, indeed, Joe. It is a mailbag show tomorrow. We won't have a we in, we out show this week. So mailbag, that's kind of what we'll talk about tomorrow. We won't have a show Thursday, honestly. So mailbag show coming up tomorrow. Hit the like button before you leave, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on I Beat Asian Sports Talk.